welcome to the EV Cafe.
Right, so let's start. Welcome to the first ever live show from all the way in Milton Keynes, the Electric Vehicle Experience Centre. After many episodes, we're on 15 now?
Yeah.
15? Well, this will be our 16th. After many episodes and many technical difficulties to make this work, we are pleased to finally stream this live. Whilst actually together, it's actually nice to be around some humans. Even John, actually. I just want to say a couple of things before we make a start. First, please bear with us. This is the first time we've done this, so if there are issues, then I'm sorry. The shop is closed, that's why we're not wearing masks, but the centre is open. So you might hear some background noises from tannoys, people walking past, people trying to get in. And if there's a fire drill, well, you won't see any of us. You'll just see us running for our lives. But just to go back to that, COVID-19 is very important. So we are doing everything we can to make sure that we are distanced from each other. We have face masks at the ready. We have sanitized, and John will continue to sanitize throughout the show. And we have taken our temperatures this morning, so we're all okay at the moment. But when COVID does eventually bugger off, we do hope that we can invite all of you to these kind of shows and actually see you all face to face, because that's what it's all about. And but for the time being, we're going to run them like this. So let's start with introductions. My name's, as you already know, my name's Johnny Berry. I work for Renault. Well, I don't need to be a moderator as such today because it's just all of us together. But for a bit of fun, still put your hand up if you want to talk. So yeah, we'll start from this side. So with Sarah, if you'd like to say hello to our lovely guests.
Hello everybody, and thank you for coming along to our first live EV Cafe. This is the first of many. We're hoping to go on tour. So those who don't know me, Tour Life Band. Tour
bus, an EV tour bus. A VW ID bus, if you're listening.
For those who don't know me, I specialise in zero emission mobility. It's my mission to make sure that everything is in fact low or zero emission. So I'm here today to fly the flag for micromobility and mobility as a service, as well as switching fleets to EV. So I'll also be here taking my little chalkboard here, which we're going to be exploring with the myths as we go forward. So thanks for having me.
Sam, you're next.
I'm next. Hello, everybody. I'm Sam Clark. I'm the Chief Vehicle Officer for GridServe. So I have a job description which is basically electrification of the nation. So I want as many people in electric vehicles as possible, and happy and delighted. And thank you guys for inviting me to join you to be for the first ever live cafe. It's fantastic.
Oh. Hey everybody, I am #VanGeek, and of course we are in the EV Experience Centre with a Zoe EV van, which is great news. And my purpose in life is, of course, to see as many vans come on the road electric, proving the case for electric vans up and down the country. I work for Vanarama and have the real joy and pleasure of spending time with these guys today. So it's great to be with you, and we look forward to busting some myths.
And that means it must be me. Last but not least. John Curtis, hello. I am, I suppose, a bit different from these guys in that I'm the ex-head of sustainable transport. So everything from walking, cycling, electric vehicles, public transport, you name it, I've done it for the Scottish Government. And now I'm really into chargers, how you get your charge, where the best chargers are, what we need on our streets to keep you going. So that's really my thing. And I just love the fact that there are 5 people here with real commitment. We walk the talk, we drive the drive every single day to prove that it can be done. And we're here to bust those myths.
Thank you. And as John mentioned, we all walk the talk, we all drive EVs, but we must remember that although it comes second nature to us, we must remind ourselves that for most people out there, it still is a very new product, a new experience, a new way of doing things. And that's why we do these shows. This is why we're doing a myth busting session and everything else. So I think I'm going to lead on to this actually. If you want to show the camera, so we've kind of given ourselves a name as the EV.
Sorry, who gave the name?
I'm not going to say anything.
The Avengers.
The Avengers.
Bum, bum, bum.
So Sarah will pop up from time to time with a myth, and then we will discuss this. If we feel that it's going on for too long, then John will get his big clock out and wave it all about, and we'll move on to the next one. But to help us, for a bit of fun, and to start off the show with a bit of fun, and to help us decide on the first myth, we've all got a myth in our minds. Just to begin, we are going to do a donut challenge. And in the respect of COVID-19, we're not going to touch this donut when we eat it. So the first person to eat the donuts without touching it, we'll start off with the first myth. So guys, if you want to go and get your donut and show the camera.
This is a ridiculous
Don't
game.
choose the chocolate one, that's fine.
How am I getting?
I've gone with one with a hole in it just to make life a little bit easier.
So has everybody got one with a hole in it?
I don't know.
Is this
I'm
speaking
not allowed
words
to
out?
touch it, remember?
Okay.
You said.
This is a ridiculous game.
Right,
No touch.
okay, good.
Right, okay, so on the count of 3, not using your hands.
And has it got to all be
You're
gone?
cheating there,
How is
Sarah.
that cheating? I'm not
I know,
touching the
no,
donut.
it's got to be on the table,
It's
surely.
got to be on the
Right,
table.
okay.
Got
You
it on the
didn't
table.
specify that.
Right, 3.
Does it all have to be gone and
Yes.
swallowed?
Yes. Yes.
Darn.
yes.
That was fit.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
This is going to take ages. Okay.
The things I do for you.
I bet. Yeah.
Come on, one of you's got to finish.
I feel
At
like
least they're good.
that counts. Does that count?
Well, you've eaten it
I'm
already.
so close.
Oh, John's done it.
Yeah, well done.
Well done, John. I didn't
Oh,
even
I'm
get anywhere
actually
close.
safe.
Look.
I am safe. There's so much left. I was like,
Oh.
I'll eat it.
There was never any doubt. Biggest mouth, done.
Okay,
That's
John,
a
what
good
will it be?
My myth, electric vehicles, they don't go very far.
oh.
They don't go very far.
Well, I can tell you otherwise, because last week I was in the Zoe van over in the West Country, and in 3 days I did 750 miles.
Who was chasing you?
Genuinely, in eco mode, which means less abrupt acceleration, limited to a certain speed, was meaning that I was getting closer to the WLTP figures on the van at 240 in between charges. And I can tell you one thing, right? I cannot do 240 without having a coffee break, toilet break, or anything like that. And I found that I felt I might as well charge than having the toilet break. So as an example, I came from Bristol back to Eastbourne on the Thursday of last week, about 200 miles. I got home with 150 miles
Wow.
because I needed that break on the way back. And I thought, well, I might as well charge.
That's your bladder range then.
yes. There we go.
I
There we
have a
go.
question. Was that range before or after all the donuts you had? Additional payload.
So
Yeah.
you're doing 240 in the Zoe.
Yeah. With eco mode, you know, we are in the summertime, so we've got slightly warmer climate outside. So,
But that's not necessarily the greatest range, because we've seen that
No.
over the last 4 or 5 years, ranges, how far an electric vehicle will go, have gone up from the original Leaf,
Yes,
which was
yes.
allegedly 110,
Yeah.
120.
NEDC though. So NEDC, and what does NEDC really stand for? Not even distinctly close.
There we go. So we've gone from that kind of range, and in the real world, my Series 1's Leaf was around 90 miles.
Yeah.
We're now up to 300. It's becoming standard. 400
Yeah.
is possible.
Yeah.
And you get to the point where actually we are competing with internal combustion engine vehicles. Having a vehicle that does 400 miles
Yeah.
on petrol and a vehicle that's electric that does 400
Yeah,
miles.
but do you think that petrol vehicles need that range because they have to go somewhere to refuel, or
It's a
and
mindset.
mentality? Because it's funny, because statistics are out there as 97% of us drive less than 27 miles a day, and because spent hours, me and Paul actually spent hours setting this up for today, I couldn't help but listen to some passersby, people walking in. And what I found interesting, I always want to speak to the Zoe customers naturally, and they own the first 20 kilowatt hour battery. Then they went to 40 kilowatt hour battery. Then they actually had the option to go back to 20 kilowatt hour and pay less money than going to a 50 kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And they decided to go 20 kilowatt hour because they were not using the range. And I just found that, and that, why go and buy a 50 kilowatt hour or bigger battery or bigger range if you're not using it? It's a waste of resource. You're paying for that.
Yeah.
And you're never going to fully utilize it.
Well, does that come down to fear factor though, that actually you think, oh, what about that one time where I want to go to the tip of Cornwall and I'm not going to have bladder range, I'm going to do the whole journey in one go at midnight. This is a reality that a lot of customers I speak to feel. They feel that one time a year they really need that big battery, and then they think to themselves, actually I can't afford that big battery, and then they don't bloody bother.
But the joy is that vehicles are able to do the typical Cornwall journey. So one of my colleagues used, it was a Mercedes-Benz EQC, range of about 250 miles. And that was perfectly able to get down to, not in one go, a short, fast charge, because we've got the rapid charger available. So he was able to make it down to Cornwall, everything in the vehicle. So there are vehicles out there that can meet that lifestyle requirement, the occasional bit, but also the daily stuff as well.
Yeah. And for me, doing something like 40,000 genuine miles a year, the 240 is the magical number for me.
Yeah.
Genuinely is for me, for my purpose.
And so that's you in your business, but that's because you drive to get to locations. Paul, with vans,
I've been
far be it for me to steal your thunder, but tell us about commercial vehicles and vans and how they need to operate.
Ding, ding, ding. Is this the next myth?
Oh!
Well, it's the same myth, but it's the other side of the coin, I'm afraid.
What's it called? What's your myth called, Paul? I write it
Well,
down.
so was van range and payload.
Payload.
She's good, harsh, but good.
Van range and payload. So we're talking about range, and we're talking about, how far these wonderful cars can go. And obviously the good news is that the Renault Zoe has, of course, been made into a van also. So there is now a van that has 240 miles range, which sadly is the smallest van in the world, actually, it feels. But it is a small van. It's got a payload of around 300 kilos, but if you fill that up, it's going to have a slightly less payload, slightly less range. But that isn't going to matter too much for the Zoe. But in the other section, so the large van sector, there is only just a few vans coming onto the market with reasonable range. And the payload, because there's the dispensation to increase the gross vehicle limit from 3.5 tons to 4.25 tons, there is the ability to get a decent payload. But of course, that will affect the range. So my sort of case is that many operations can use the vans that are available. The average journey a van makes every week, every day, 50 miles. 80% of our journeys are below 80 miles a day in vans, but there is still a significant portion of vehicles that need to do more than that 80 miles, and there's not enough.
Simon Brace says, tell us the truth, Paul.
Tell us the truth. Well, the truth is that...
You can't handle the truth.
But I think Sam's best place to give some insight here because he's done it.
Well, I think one thing I was going to say was Sarah's comment about the fact, and quite right, that people don't travel very far on average, but they want a vehicle that can do that long journey, even if it's only a couple of times a year. In the commercial world, which you're referring to, there's a fair degree of consistency in terms of how much we're traveling. And if logistics companies are going long distances or longer distances than domestic, it's predictable because we've got some, and I spent 10 years of my life doing this, albeit in a smaller part of London, but it's regular miles, sorry.
Yeah.
And that's just, I'm sure this will come up many times, but it's an education piece, it's learning, getting people to understand what the limitations are of the vehicles and then applying those to their fleet. Now, if that's the lowest hanging fruit today, fine, at least you're getting the beginnings of a fleet that's electrified because you know that certain vehicles will only need to do a certain amount of miles every day.
Yeah.
And then as the technology gets better, the vehicles get bigger, then we can all grow and ride that wave.
And Sam, to your point, sorry, John, he's had his hand up, but I'm still going to carry on.
Can I just say, please do not touch each other.
Oh, sorry.
Wipe your hands, sanitize.
Where's the spray?
Where was I? So the point is that, we'll just wait for that to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
What we've seen in the market is companies like Centrica, DPD, Mighty, a number of others take vehicles en masse in electric form because they have that predictability, because they know how their business operates and they know the journeys daily that they will do. So Sam's absolutely right. Planning is key to an effective transition to electric vehicles.
John, just before you start, I just wanted to point out to the
Just put that
audience
over your
that you know, please use the Q&A tab to give us myths as well for the discussion, and also we will go through some of the chat boxes and nice comments there. But John, you first.
No, just before John speaks, can I speak?
Actually, John, go get donuts or something, will you?
Oh, come on.
So while John's gone, I will just say to Simon Brace, I think you're probably right. 150 miles is pretty close to where mass adoption of EVs is on par. But John's back now.
Yeah.
We
Sorry,
need to
John.
let him
Come on,
speak.
John.
Stop sulking.
Come on then.
I was only going to say that range is in here. Range just speaks to the distance that a vehicle can go before it needs charging. It's not that it can only go 100 miles or 200 miles. I have a friend, Chris Ramsey, electric vehicle real expedition expert, who took an electric vehicle, a first generation Nissan Leaf, range of 110 odd miles.
60.
160.
No, 60 real world.
60 real world, okay. Took it from Aberdeen in Scotland, drove from Aberdeen to compete in the Mongol Rally, completed the Mongol Rally, and drove back again in his first generation Nissan Leaf. Range is in your head. It only means that you have to charge at the end of that distance.
Oh, is this time for the next one? Who am I being? Who am I being now? There are no charges anywhere.
Hey! I feel happy again now. Yes, but if you've got lots of chargers and fabulous GridServe outlets who are going to charge the nation, let's be honest, the world is a wonderful place.
Yep.
Okay,
Charging.
next myth then. There are no charges anywhere.
I think, Sam, you need to lead this.
Oh yeah. Oh, right there.
I'm going to go grab a cup of tea.
Okay.
Go, champ.
All right. Where shall I start? Right. There's 12,000 charging locations in the UK currently, give or take, which is a lot, and it's a hell of a lot more than we have petrol stations. However, in my humble opinion, it's not about how many charger locations we have. It's about the quality of those locations. The Tesla supercharger network is pretty good. We've got 50 or 60 charge points around the charging locations, around the country, that mean that you, with 10 or 12 bays or something like that, perhaps on average, and it works. What we need, in my humble opinion, is to have electric forecourts, shall we call them? Let's say.
Really?
Really? What made you come up with that?
Well, I
idea?
don't know.
Great
It
idea.
just seems like a really good idea, to be honest, Paul. But we need locations where many of us can charge at the same time, high power, with all the amenities we want, so that we mitigate Johnny's weak.
Geriatric.
Get out!
We mitigate my fruity friend's bladder concerns over here by locations that can solve many problems for vans as well as lorries as well as cars. So I don't want to have to go hunting for a charger in the back of a hotel car park somewhere only to find there's somebody else already using it, or it's not working. I would rather see less locations with more chargers that are more powerful, that can cater for more people, because ultimately that's what a petrol station does. So we have to replicate that model.
But I think what's interesting, we're here in Milton Keynes, and of course we're in the EV Experience Centre. From here, there's probably 8, 10, 12, 14 chargers with 2 points each, all within a very short space of time. So what we're seeing is destination chargers for, kind of shopping and other things like that. But Sam's absolutely right. To solve the commercial side of things, the idea, for the forecourts and to get charging fast, which is something that we haven't really talked about when we talked about range, but getting charging to vehicles fast is really key.
Oh, and the fact that, Milton Keynes, I've only been here a handful of times, and every time I can find a charger, yes, but if you're not a member of that charging company, it drives me round the bend. So in order for this trip today, I had to make sure I joined the club, and that annoys me because I'd happily pay anything to be in anyone's club. Please, can I be in your club?
Oh, on that basis, it's £50.
But the reality is, and you're right, and what really frustrates me is that OLEV have said, oh, well, we're going to mandate that all these charge point operators work together and that any customer can use any point. It's not happening.
No.
Why is it not happening? Why are these organisations not working together? Why is government not holding them to account and making sure that the public get the network they deserve? This has to change, and it's us that can change it. We need to put pressure on our MPs, put pressure on government to say this really matters.
Yeah.
You got stuck just recently, didn't you, Sarah?
Yeah.
Not being able to charge.
Well, yeah, because it was one of the biggest percentage shareholders of the CPO market, but I didn't happen to be a member of that one. I'm a member of all the others. But I just really prefer it when you can rock up and just pay, actually pay. I'm happy to give you my details. I use this much energy, blah, 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 if you want me to via an app, but actually just let me use the charger.
Give your details, you'll give your money.
Yeah, I will.
There is no commercial reason why this shouldn't happen. It's just protectionism.
Is it legacy? Is it early days? Is that why?
It's not early now.
I think
we
there's some
set
legacy.
I put in
There
the
is
first,
some legacy.
There is,
though.
yeah.
I put in the first chargers into Scotland, and I was part of the OLEV group, the Plugged in Places group, that received government funding. And I remember sitting there and being told that we will all play nicely together, that there will be interoperability right from the get-go, and it hasn't happened. It needs to change. Johnny?
Can I just talk from experience? I think just before I say anything, actually, on Sam's comment about 12,000 locations, what I find interesting is, according to ZapMap, only 5% of those locations are actually being utilised, because 95% of the time is charging at home. I've actually found, by having a bigger battery, more range, I'm using more of the public network than at home anymore.
Yes.
Because it lasts so long. And when I do, obviously I've got a car because I go places. So when I go to these places, I charge. So I'm always topping it up, and I barely use my home charger.
You go places.
I go places, yeah. Not quite as far as you, Scotland. That's like north to south,
We've
but
got
I
an
could easily
excellent
do
comment
that.
on the chat here from Samantha Cliff, who
I was gonna
says,
say that.
don't you think that investment in strategically placed charging residential infrastructure would benefit more users? Those without a drive, those not being able to charge overnight is a huge barrier to entry. This will only get worse when businesses start providing electric vans and cars to their workforce. Thank you,
I'm
Samantha,
sure Sam's
very
going to
well
pipe
said.
up and just say,
I am going to pipe up and say that Samantha, if you have the opportunity of your own off-street parking, then you're lucky. If you don't fill up your car with petrol or diesel outside your house now. So long as we've got a proper network, like a petrol station network, to facilitate those that don't have off-street parking, and you can do to go to our original points around vehicles that do 200 or 300 miles, then it's just the same as what we have now.
That is true, Sam. But so the challenge you've got is speed and people's perception of time.
Yeah.
So you have to change your behaviour in order to be able to adopt that kind of method.
Yeah.
Which is why I think, and the lamppost charging has been lambasted somewhat, a little bit.
Mainly by me, yes,
yeah.
I know.
But it's true.
We've been there. Okay.
They do get iced, and there isn't sort of protection over those bays. But that is the kind of solution that needs to be rolled out more broadly to allow people to take the full benefit of electric vehicles, which is to charge when the vehicle is stationary, which is, according to statistics, 95% of the time.
Can we just throw in a wobbler? Can we try not to use terminology? We've used WLTP, we've used ICED, without explaining what those things are.
Yeah, that's not a donut, by the way. We've eaten iced donuts, but we're talking about internal combustion engine vehicles in electric vehicle parking spaces. There you go. That's ICE.
Just so as we remember that we're appealing to fleet managers, for instance, who know this industry inside out, back, front, and upside down. But also, one of our key markets is to make sure that users, ordinary people like me, understand what it is this industry talks about, because we will throw numbers at you, we'll throw terminology at you. We don't mean to make it exclusive, we forget. So when we forget, in the chat box, let us
Give
know.
us a slap. Okay, team, I've got one for you. So I work a lot with property developers, and I'm constantly seeing the planning permissions and arguments going on with contributions that developers have to make. And I would like to see, this is for discussion, instead of, bearing in mind they have to adhere to the 1.2 parking spaces, we're trying to bring the number of cars down. It would be fantastic if, instead of providing extra car parking spaces with home charge per space, wouldn't it be better if the developer was able to contribute to a future-proof grid that featured a rapid charger in the neighbourhood as a sort of pod? So anybody anywhere can use it, but if you happen to live there and you want to have an electric car, you've always got that certainty at home that you can plug in very quickly and chat to your neighbour. Oh, heaven forbid you might talk to someone.
And do you see that being a commercial?
Yeah, a real advantage, a
investment?
massive advantage, because it works out about £1,000 per house to be able to provide the connection for each home. But wouldn't a developer rather have the opportunity, and the homeowner have the opportunity, to decide if they want that? Or perhaps that money could be put towards mobility credits if you're lucky enough to live in a city that supports micro-mobility like scooters and car sharing. That'd be such a better way to spend that money, which only gets lumped onto the top of your house price anyway. So shouldn't the purchaser have a part to play in the decision-making process?
I think it's worth, because there's a couple of ideas. Large housing associations are now building properties that, instead of putting parking spaces into those properties, they're putting a vehicle,
For
an
share.
electric vehicle, with a charge point for share. Exactly, you can book that vehicle out.
Out of the goodness of their heart, though, if we're talking about legislation and changing the way things are built from the ground up, that could do with being
Yeah,
shoved in.
I don't. I mean, at the end of the day, they've got to cover their costs. So there is a reward and return kind of thing going on, I guess. And people recognizing that actually, rather than put parking spaces all over the place, let's reduce the amount of cars, because we know that cars in cities are going to come down.
Yeah.
So let's help them come down and provide rideshare schemes.
On that note, I will just say, if you live anywhere near Trefoil Road in Helsham, I have a charge point on my driveway that's not being used at the moment. So I'll have to figure that out. And if I get a lot of uptake, I'll upgrade my supply so I can put a rapid in there.
Well,
Free
now
phase
we
of
all know
rapid in
where
there.
you live.
Oh, I could have been anywhere.
We how much do you want us to put through the letterbox for payment?
I have a question.
Oh.
It's just something to throw out to the audience, if I may. We've dubbed ourselves, and Sarah, you're on. We've dubbed ourselves the Avengers.
Well, who did that? It wasn't us.
Well, it wasn't us. We have
wasn't
kind of
us.
We've claimed it.
we've
Mike
claimed the
Harry.
name.
Yeah. And just to be clear, that's Evengers.
Avengers,
Not Avengers.
Avengers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're the
We don't want to get
Avengers.
sued.
Mike, if you're watching, can you
Mike.
tell us if that was a genuine mistake or if that you meant it to be Evengers? Because if it was, you're amazing. 'Cause
But
that was
this is sticking. This is something
Yeah.
that we're going to work with now. So we need your help. We were thinking about our secret special powers that we have and our names. And what would you call us as our superhero names? Now we had
Has
a
to be
couple.
clean.
We had a couple for Paul.
yeah.
Yeah, so we need to keep it clean, so they've run out,
Yeah. So we had Van Diesel, which we rather liked.
Then we realised that's not going to
That's not
work, is
gonna
it?
work.
No.
Captain Fantastic, we really liked.
We like that.
So we think that Paul we
Paul's
covered
sorted.
with Captain Fantastic.
Or that Supervan.
You could,
Superman!
Supervan.
Oh, this is great
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
But we're done with fans now. For the rest of us, so the other four, what would our superhero name be? And if necessary, our special power. So if you can consider that, check it in the chat box.
Be nice.
Be creative, and at the end of the session, we'll see if we can come back to you, because we're going to work this up into our own graphics, logos. So what you come up with will stick with us, possibly for the rest of our lives.
I can't wait to see what comes through.
Oh, I
and,
can.
and
I
John
really
Scott
can.
will certainly be with him for the rest of his life.
Right, we need a myth.
We need a
Oh,
myth.
okay,
Johnny
okay,
Berry
okay,
hasn't come up with a myth.
Come on, JB.
JB,
What have we
JB.
got?
he's on the spot now. Let's ask a gobby.
Oh, wait,
But who's this? Who's this? Who's this?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Please can all guests wear face coverings at all times whilst inside the centre and follow the one-way system marked on the floor. It is now lawful to wear a face covering inside the shopping centre. It should cover both your nose and your mouth. Thank you.
Right.
We're inside here, so we don't have to. We've
Okay.
got permission.
So from our video, I can't do his northern accent very well, but I'll try and replicate it.
This should be good.
Yeah.
Can I take this off yet?
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try actually with the accent now because this was recorded. So, but if everybody does this, how will the grid cope?
That was
Oh, God,
that
Matthew,
was
I
rubbish.
apologise on behalf of Your
Matt
colleague.
might
That was rubbish.
join. Just want to say, actually, Matt might join. He's in an airport at the moment in Manchester, but he might join just to say hello and just also say Scott Eady's in the chat box, and he is officially our chat box master.
Yay, well done,
So if you can
Scott.
give us an Avengers name for Scott,
Okay.
then that'd be
Shall I
great.
read out some of the names before we go on to this?
Yes.
Names.
We've got from Russell Bolton, the Evangelist. Very nice, very good.
Nice.
Good.
Yes, good.
Classy, that's classy.
JC Comic, because you always make us smile, even when you don't want to. Is that a compliment? We've got Johnny Berry, it's Volteam
Voltface.
James, we'll have words after this.
And I think the favourite so far is Power Rangers, and those masks really helped inspire that, I think.
Yes,
Power
that's good.
Rangers.
Go, go, Power
That's
Rangers.
good.
I love that. That's cool. Yeah, good work.
Right.
Okay, so plugging in then, come on.
Grid
plugging
won't
in.
cope. Grid won't
Good,
cope.
right,
It
Cope.
will cut.
Yes,
So
it will.
there's somebody from another channel online who has said that potentially we might need 10 nuclear power stations the size of Hinkley Point to cope with all of the electric vehicles that will be necessary by 2030. Utter cobblers. In Scotland, like from where I am, as you can tell from my accent, we have 100% renewable energy. We don't do nuclear. We don't do fossil fuel. All we do is wind and sea and tidal and all that fabulous stuff.
Solar.
And solar. We'll have some solar.
A bit
shall we?
solar, please.
Let's throw
Yep.
some solar in there. That's what we use. And it powers all of the vehicles that we have in Scotland and the best network that there is in the UK, apart from GridServe.
Yeah.
How is that possible? Sam, you're commercially deploying renewable energy in
Yeah.
your solutions.
Yeah, I mean, we've recently acquired a solar farm such that we're able to produce our own electricity from that thing that comes up every day and goes back down at the end.
Right, what solar?
the
Yeah,
sun.
yeah, the sun.
It doesn't happen in
It-
Milton
it-
Keynes, I can tell
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it's really handy that it happens. That it just every day this thing comes up, we take some energy out of it. and
Yeah, I have that
it's
as
just
well.
brilliant. So we're using that so that the vehicles that we'll be supplying, as well as selling electricity on the forecourts, we're selling vehicles too, and those will be net zero today because we're creating the energy today and then putting that energy into the vehicle.
And how
lease.
are you getting? Obviously, you're not going to have everybody plug in at the same time.
No, well, that's a good question, and two answers, and one of them I'm going to plagiarise from someone that the world knows very well in Graham Cooper at National Grid.
Who
But
was meant to be here?
He
with
was
us.
meant to be here.
Just
Love
apologise.
Graham.
Give a shout out to
Love
Graham.
you.
Shout out to Graham.
yeah, shout out. Well, I'm going to use his words now, pretty much. So, or I will in a second. So, Johnny, we sleeve energy. So we sleeve energy from wherever we harvest it back into the grid, and then we take it from a different location. So we're generating energy in one place, and then we're using it for the electric vehicles in the other.
And sanitizers. It's that time,
Sanitizer.
people.
And then I'll attempt to use some of Graham's own words, because I remember reading an article, one of his myth-busting articles, in fact, about energy, and there's not enough to cope and all that. That's even worse than your accent. And one of the points that he made was that we, as a country, we consumed far more energy in 2002 than we do today, because we've got more efficient generally with the amount of energy we consume for everything else. So we've already got capacity because we know that we used more 18 years ago than we do today. And the other point that he raised quite rightly is what we can't do is everyone get home at 6 o'clock in the evening and plug their cars in. So we've got the energy, but not all at the same time. And that's where smartness comes in, and the fact that, you know, all chargers in the future need to be smart, because we all have to sleep. As much as the sun comes up, we've all got to sleep. And while we're sleeping, that's the time we need to charge our vehicles, not when we get back from work, but before we wake up the next day. If we solve that, which is not that difficult, because in many different worlds of EV industry already, we've demonstrated it's quite easy to time charging.
Yeah.
Once we've done that, we'll be fine.
And for those who don't understand, Sam, sun comes up, creates energy, solar panels turn that energy into electricity.
Yes.
For your commercial application, you store that energy. So we know that with wind and tidal's pretty well constant, but with solar, there's the daytime, and then at night, if I need a charge from GridServe, how does that actually happen? How do we get that electricity? Because the sun's not shining.
Yeah, well, we have, as an example, the first electric forecourt we're building in Braintree in Essex, which should be ready to go live at the end of October this year. We have a 5 megawatt battery on site.
Okay.
5 megawatt battery. So that's an awful
Give
lot
us,
of energy.
give us some context for that, Sam. What does that mean?
How many vehicles, for example?
Well, that's 5,000 kilowatt hours of energy.
Right.
So
How
how
many
many
houses?
Zoes? That's 500 Zoes.
Yes, is that 500 Zoes?
50 kilowatt
You
hours.
would have to use Zoes, wouldn't you? Of course you would. Yeah. No, I don't mind using Zoes actually. Anyway,
1,000, would it?
5,000.
5,000? No,
But that's a lot of homes.
That's it's a lot of homes. So I mean, the name of GridServe is by design. We're serving the grid. We're not just
Right.
taking energy to support electric
Yes.
vehicles. We're serving the grid by virtue of having big batteries like this, where we're harvesting energy when it's there and then distributing it back out to vehicles when it's needed. So it's not just about the grid not coping. It's actually about helping the grid as well.
So you're overcoming this issue of us having to turn off, for instance, wind turbines because the grid doesn't need it, and we're paying farmers to not use their turbines. Utter madness.
Yeah.
Rather than creating the energy and storing it locally and using it
Yeah.
locally.
It seems sad, really. I mean, through lockdown, I had a massive 52 kilowatt hour battery on my drive that I wasn't using at all. Obviously, I half charged because I didn't want to leave it at a high state of charge for the longevity of the battery, which we'll get onto our next myths. Batteries don't last.
Yeah.
But it seems crazy that just sitting there, it could be harnessing that renewable power and helping the grid and ultimately become more renewable. And you think how many people in my situation, I think
Yeah.
it worked out as nearly 500,000 kilowatt hours are available there as mobile batteries.
This is what somebody commented in the chat box, that the vehicle to grid technology.
Yeah.
Where are we with that?
Oh,
Because
ding,
That's
ding,
another
ding.
myth.
it's,
V2G
Well, we-
won't work. The next myth.
we can come on to that.
Oh,
But just
he's pushing back.
but it's important to kind of understand that, the vehicle to grid, the timing piece about bringing energy back into the grid when the is needed most, and load balancing and timing of smart charging, all of that technology needs to come together. But also with this charging issue, when we come back to the commercial solution, and especially with vehicles that are arriving back in a depot overnight, there is a problem, but not with the grid as such, but with the local grid, the infrastructure locally.
Yes. Yeah.
It does need some thought, and it does need collaboration with DNOs, so the district network operators, the people like British Gas and Western Power and npower and all those other guys, working with local businesses to upgrade the connection so that the power they need can be taken for the vehicles.
Yeah.
But equally, if they're clever, we'll work out how to get that energy back as well, so that the energy is taken at the right time and given at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trouble with the phrase vehicle to grid is that the implication is the energy has to go back into the grid, and it doesn't. In my previous life, I built, the largest, I think it was the largest V2G network, and we had 10 V2G chargers all working every night. They were V2G, but we never put energy back into the grid. We just powered the building with the energy. So we were able to not take from the grid, which is net the same, but it meant we didn't have to, there was no upgrading in order to do any of that. We just made sure that the vehicles were powering the building during the night, as well as being fully charged the next day.
JB, you said something about 52 kilowatt hours of battery. What is that kilowatt hour thing? The bigger the number of kilowatt hours, the further the car goes. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's measured on miles per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
So in order to achieve the WLTP figures, you've got to be anywhere between 4 and 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour, and then you can do your maths there and get your range.
So
So you
when-
measure that instead of your miles per gallon.
So when a customer looks at a car,
Yeah,
the bigger the kilowatt hour figure, the further the car.
not necessarily, no,
Right.
because it's all about how it uses the electrons as well.
So it's about the
Yeah,
efficiency, as
efficiency
well as the
and
number.
battery capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whereas I hate to bring Zoe back into it, but well, I don't actually.
you don't.
But we're
Shameless.
talking
Fair
we're
play.
talking 245 miles with a 52 kilowatt hour usable battery capacity. Now that's because it's a very efficient vehicle. It returns a good mileage per kilowatt hour. There are some heavier German brands that need nearly twice the size battery to get that sort of range. So they're half the efficiency, between 2 and 3 miles per kilowatt hour, without mentioning. And we kind of happen to know now that actually you need to build an electric car from the ground up. It doesn't need to be a shared platform with an ICE vehicle in order to make it that bit efficient.
So Is that because they're lightweighting the vehicle?
Lots of different things. You know, aerodynamics. Aerodynamics really do play a massive part in EVs. You know, squeezing that energy efficiency out of them. The rolling road resistance from just the tyres, the way the alloys are designed, the lightweight materials. You know, it's.
Can we go there? Can we go to alloys? Seriously, I hate electric vehicle wheels. Seriously.
Put it on the Mini.
The Mini's okay. Do you know what? I can just about cope with the Mini, but there are some. Just
Are you about to slag off the Zoe? Here?
plug ugly? No, no names, no pack drill.
You just did it
You're lucky
yourself.
you're over there. You're lucky you're over there.
He didn't even say it. You
He
just
said
did it on
he
your
hates
own.
EV alloys.
So there are some that are better than others, but frankly, that sometimes aerodynamics gets in the way of beauty.
Yeah,
And you know,
yeah.
when you work with people like Sam, beauty is number one.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So it's quite interesting. So,
So unnecessary.
so I'm not going to talk about Zoe this time. I'm going to talk about
All right then.
guys.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I can't even mute you.
He's got his pants on really tight
This
today.
He
is
started it. He
The only thing I
started
don't like about this, I can't actually mute you.
Yeah, so anyway, let's start around here. Oh, actually, I just touched you. What do
Do you know what? It's a really interesting topic, actually, the aesthetics, because I'll talk about a different vehicle this time. I'll talk about Nissan Leaf, the first generation. Now, that's an acquired taste, I think, but it is designed, aerodynamics is first at mind. So Nissan actually say that it's more aerodynamic than a Bullet. The way that, do you know why the headlights stick out the way that they do?
No.
Do
Okay,
tell.
so they stick out because they deflect wind away from the wing mirrors. Because it's an electric car, you can really pick up on wind noise and other vibration stuff. So that was all they stick out. They screw quite a lot. If you notice on the first generation, so it deflects wind from the wing mirrors. So again, it's all designed around being an EV.
I'm going to get Nissan Leaf pants for my son, just to deflect the wind.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant
These are-
full, sorry.
No, it's just disgusting.
Yeah, but oh no, that's just an advertisement radio. So I think we were touching on a new myth, weren't we? I think we've covered that one. So are we done with E2G? Are we?
Well, so, I mean, the chat box has a few comments on V2G, so I think it's worth kind of maybe exploring just slightly more, because at the moment there is only Chademo Japanese
Yeah.
vehicles. So I think, and I'm really happy to be corrected, but I think it's 2023 before CCS will be vehicle to grid ready.
Well, and the vehicles, when will the vehicles? I know you can retrofit some kind of bi-directional charger, but are the OEMs bothered about that? Does anybody know on the chat? Is that happening? Is that
I think
happening?
Scott's the
Tesla
best person to ask right now.
Tesla was cited as having that technology already in their vehicle, but then that seemed to have been disproven. But if anybody's got other information on that, it's interesting, because it definitely is something that would make a difference, we think, to the long-term plan, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think there's an argument as to whether it is more effective than just smart charging at the moment. But I think that's the question around for a lot of OEMs, but it will get there, I think.
It's also the case that not all vehicles are created equal. So one thing, going back to John's point about, what's a kilowatt hour, understanding some of the basics, a lot of the vehicles can charge at different speeds. So depending on what charger you're plugged into, the car decides how fast you actually charge. And the V2G stuff, whether that's enabled or not enabled in a car, is not a sticker on the side or something anyone knows about yet. Chademo and CCS, what's the difference? Or what do either of those things mean? I mean, one thing I'm always reminded by our CEO, he keeps reminding me quite rightly that less than 1% of the people out there right now have a registered EV. So we've got 99% of the population that need to somehow understand some of this stuff. And hopefully we're some of the people that help educate them into that. But there's so much to learn, and we've got to try and boil it down to simplicity.
And there are some really good guides out there, aren't there, Sam, in terms of the sorts of plugs that you get on cars, the sorts of plugs you find on chargers, and which ones go in where, AC and DC, what the difference is, how quick they charge. We know it's complicated, or seems to be, but actually, with the best will in the world, if I can learn it, and he can learn it, then anybody can learn it.
Yeah, we're currently building actually an A to Z, and we've spent a long time doing it. And when we started, we didn't realise how difficult it was going to be. And it's taken weeks and months actually to come up with every conceivable letter from A to Z of all the different variants of things that we need to know about in the EV world, and we'll be releasing that in a few months' time. But so we'll have a proper dictionary, EV dictionary, if you like, of all the different things and what they all mean.
It reminds me of Blackadder. Blackadder and Baldrick writing the new dictionary.
Oh yes, sausage. You forgot sausage.
Aardvark.
I think
I'm too young to know what you're on about.
I'm just about to get my clock out, people. Avert your eyes. It's
Clock time. I thought you were going to hit the camera then. I really thought you were going to hit the camera. That
Can you
would have
bring
been...
us a donut over whilst you're there?
Still connected.
donuts. Get your donuts.
Why do you want a
Not for me,
donut?
thank you.
No, thank
Why
you.
do you want
One's
a
enough.
donut, Johnny? Are you running out of energy? Does your battery not have enough capacity?
Donuts. Get your donuts. Chocolate donuts.
I'm all right without the
So,
donut.
guys,
I'm
please
so
do
good.
tell us if that you're hearing everything, because we're talking together for the first time with just one microphone. Please do give us feedback if we need to be clearer or separate our conversations a bit more, just so that we can help. You can help us help get all the information out that we can.
Well, it's the first time I've spoken to you. I don't really talk to you very much. Not all together, anyway.
No.
Our little secret. I would like to move on to the next myth, please,
Next
team.
myth.
I think we need to
Thank
think
you,
about
Graham, by the way.
batteries don't last. Who did that one on the video?
Who did that one in the video? I can't even...
Still last.
Batteries don't last.
Maybe you didn't make the cut.
Batteries don't last in what? Is my obvious question. Oh, I see.
Vehicles.
Electric vehicles.
No, my mobile phone.
I just plugged mine into the mains. Anyway. Oh dear.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Not that. Yeah, go.
I think-
quick.
Don't even entertain it.
I
Just
think,
move on.
Yeah, I think it's quite a reasonable myth, to be honest, because people are used to their phones and they operate at 100% of the battery of the capacity, which we know affects the longevity of it. They operate at much higher temperatures. They don't have the thermal management. Although I do know that they're putting software in place to try and help with all of that. So that's where the myths come from, isn't it? You associate to your laptop battery, your mobile phone batteries.
So let's go back to first principles.
Yeah.
Battery in your phone is one battery. Okay? So if that dies, if that one battery plays up, you're stuffed. It's different in an electric vehicle though, isn't it? There isn't just one battery. And people get really hooked up on, oh, well, it's, £20,000 worth of batteries, and if that dies, I've got a £20,000 bill. It's not like that, because there are lots of different cells within each big array, and each one of those costs about, a couple of £100. And if one of those starts to misfire, to not work properly, you can just plug the computer in and say, oh, well, actually, that cell there is underperforming. And usually, Johnny, under warranty,
Yes.
you can have that changed out
Yes.
at no cost.
The confidence is there. That's why we offer, well, that's what Renault offer and other manufacturers do actually, 8 years and 100,000-mile warranty.
Hang on. 8 years and 100,000 mile warranty
Yeah.
on the battery.
And according to our data, after 10 years, it's still within the warranty threshold.
Yeah.
So it loses about 10 to 14% state of health. So on a range of 245 vehicles, that might mean after 10 years, it's capable of doing 200 miles.
So what we're saying then is an electric vehicle battery, because of the way that it's managed and the way that it's
Yes.
looked after and the fact that it's protected at the bottom end and the top end
Yeah.
from a charging perspective, it can,
And
the
thermal
vehicles,
managed.
and firmware managed, that it will do what we think at least 100,000 miles, if not more. It will probably outlive the vehicle itself.
Yeah.
And even at that point, it then becomes recyclable into battery storage for potentially decades beyond that. And then after that, we can break it down and reuse the materials to make more batteries.
So people are actually setting up businesses now to utilise batteries into a second life. So even once they become less efficient in a car, they're still going to have plenty of storage capacity. So there's really no issue. This is in people's minds, to the point where Renault will say 8 years. We'll guarantee that for 8 years, and we'll pick up the cost if it doesn't operate.
Yeah, and as you say, static storage is the next journey, next part in its life for a battery. Then after that, at the very end, we're talking 20, 25 years. According to LG Chem, at the moment, the batteries that are supplied in the Renault Zoe, 97% can be recycled into a new battery or recycled.
Fantastic.
It's a really good story, isn't it?
Yeah.
The whole story is really
Ding,
good.
ding, 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 ding. Another myth. Does rapid charging affect battery life?
I can answer that one. Well, it ties in nicely with the battery degradation side of things because we had Geotab on an EV Cafe episode. Was it Data? Did we have Data?
Yeah.
So they did the study on 6,000 major makes and models over 6 years, and I asked them to do all vehicles as an average, Tesla Model S and a Kangoo, of course. Kangoo came in best over 6 years. I'm just going to say.
Why Johnny remembers this.
But I think some of that is down to the fact that they reported that high current charging does play a factor, as well as calendar age. So,
I was going to say, so the Kangoo,
not mileage.
The Kangoo is protected because it doesn't have
High current
DC charging or high current charging. Yeah.
And also, mileage didn't matter. And it was that, as well as age of vehicle. That's what degraded the battery, or degrades the battery. The other thing they just reconfirmed that the batteries will outlast the usable life of the vehicle. That's not to say that these vehicles are built badly, it's just that they last for a very long time.
So that sort of plays back into the idea that most charging will be done at low speeds overnight.
That's it.
Locally.
Yeah.
So whether it's, because we say 60% of people have the ability to park off-road, whereas 40% don't.
Yeah.
So we have got to think about the 40% and enable them to charge steadily overnight on mass, but we also need to give them the ability to charge quickly in public as well,
Well, this brings
which is more occasional.
Thanks to Andrew Pierce, he's just shared a link to that press release.
Geotab.
Good
Geotab.
on him.
Well done.
Andrew.
Andrew. Top of the class, Apple for the teacher.
Well done,
Did
level.
you get a gold star? Look.
So bringing back the conversation from rapid charging and big batteries that need rapid charging so they can actually move off, how about the argument that really we should be utilising the world's resources to make lots of little batteries so that everybody becomes electrified quicker and cheaper and concentrates on charging at home or destination charging? So this is a model where you have a very, like India have done, like we've seen successful elsewhere in the world. So lots of little vehicles that don't need to have massive people in them. How about e-cargo trucks and e-bikes and utilising the availability of those to make more on the road?
Okay.
Mr. Hang on, what's your name now? You are JC Comic.
Yeah, indeed. Don't know what that's all about, but anyway.
Oh, DC Comics, obviously.
DC Comics.
Yeah.
DC Comics.
Oh.
I think I've only just worked that one out.
I have got what's wrong with everyone.
Comics.
Seriously.
So you're right. I can see that smaller batteries, smaller vehicles that just do 20 miles, 30 miles. I can see that. My issue is always congestion.
Yeah.
If we move to put people into vehicles that don't need to be into vehicles, that's got to be a bad thing. So we need to be getting more people walking, more people cycling, more people undertaking active transport. And then for those journeys that have to make a journey, do it electric, do it the right way. That's absolutely right. Get more consumers off the road so that commercial vehicles can get your latest Amazon delivery to you, or your DPD delivery, pronto, then we're all happy. I've been to Mumbai. I've seen what lots of little vehicles can do. It is hellish. A great experience, go by the way, but we don't want that.
No.
We need to educate ourselves out of vehicles if we can, and where we can't, do it efficiently, and actually give the roads back to the commercial boys upon whom we are relying more and more.
Well, shout out to those cities that are actually doing exactly that, investing in mobility hubs, smart mobility, connected mobility, future-proof streets. I'm thinking specifically about Plymouth, who you've done very well lately with your mobility hub options. And Bristol's been trying to do it for a while. We'll get there. And I just think, as you say, when you give back the streets to people who can walk and cycle safely and remove those barriers to adoption on the most basic transport hierarchy level, which is your feet, then those who also don't have that option can utilise the road space to get to work by an electric vehicle if they need to.
And I have to say, I mean, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool petrol head. I have loved cars my whole life. I don't come at this from the point of give up cars, stop enjoying driving, don't go out on the roads. I really, truly don't. What I do think is that there is a place for a 5-litre V8 Mustang. Absolutely in my world. 911, GT2, most wonderful thing on the road. Love them to pieces. But we need to do that responsibly, and where we don't need to take our 5-litre V8 out on the road, Don't. Use your little Nissan Leaf, use your Renault Zoe van, rather than a whapping great big thing that you don't need to transport one box. Use your brains. This is costing you money.
But that's what's exciting about the EAV cargo bike, because we've had them on, haven't we? We've
Oh
had
yeah, I love EAV cargo.
and what a cracking little thing it is, because you basically use a laptop battery to support the driver and rider. Something's going on between Sarah and Sam over here. To support the laptop battery and enable the driver to get into the little nooks and crannies around town, use the cycle lanes, and is
what
much.
cycle lanes? They're not designed.
Well,
for
okay,
yet.
but there are some in London. And if we get more vehicles off the road and have these
love that.
protected zones, like Oxford, for instance, the no internal combustion engine or ICE vehicle zones, then these bikes will provide a real alternative.
Well,
and an
Bristol
option.
is doing it. Have you seen, I don't know if you've been to Bristol lately, but they've shut some of the most fundamental streets in the city centre purely for improving the pedestrianisation access. But what's not caught up from Twitter is that the signage is really poor at the moment, so nobody knows what they're doing. So they keep driving through bus lanes, they keep getting fines and tickets, they don't know where to park. It's really good steps. I'm so supportive of it, but I think with everything it's murder twice, cut once. But sometimes things like Extinction Rebellion and climate emergency means actually you have to go for it, put your money where your mouth is, and show the commitment that you do actually care about air quality.
I actually think that COVID has been the biggest change
Yeah.
in our lives. In my lifetime, I'm 55, and I have never seen changes in behaviour like I have now, where I this morning was told off for walking the wrong way in a shopping centre, and I went, oh, terribly sorry. Ordinarily, I'd have ripped that guy's head off. But I have learned that actually this is a new world, and it's full of new opportunities, so we can do things differently. We understand that breathing is now something that we have to protect. We understand that this will save lives, but we have transport emissions that are killing 40,000 people every year. Now, we don't need to have these to protect those lives. What we need is not to create the emissions from vehicles in the first place.
John, I think you're my hero. Is this a good time to run through the full list of hero names that we've had submitted?
Oh,
come on
yes,
then.
gosh!
Okay,
This is gonna be
okay.
great.
We have got the Incredible Volt, Van of Steel,
Oh, I like
Captain Fantastic. We knew this one.
Love that one.
Sam, what cufflinks have you got on today?
cufflinks.
I think they're super.
They are.
You better go camera, man. Go to the
You
camera.
gotta get out.
Go to the camera. It's
You've
over
got to
there,
go to the
Sam.
camera,
Go
So
on.
Sam.
you're definitely Van of Steel, anyway. I think. There you go. Have a look at that. That is unbelievable. All right, get off.
Up a bit. Yeah, we've had enough.
That's
now.
it. Yeah.
Sit
Okay.
down.
And then the best thing that came in was the villain for our mission is Iceman.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
Love it, the
Iceman.
Iceman.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Iceman, that's good.
Really do. But Ultimate Voltface, I think, is funny. with Mr.
Ultimate
Berry.
Voltface is brilliant.
I don't really have
Leo's
it yet.
got a myth coming up, by the way.
Oh,
Just,
okay. I've got Electra. Yeah, no one's really helped me here. I've got Electra and Evangelist. They're the only two that.
I like
kinda came to me.
Electra. Electra works for you, and you're in blue.
Yeah.
Voltface was my one.
Yeah, no, that works.
Ultimate Voltface is brilliant. I think that might be sticking,
What
Johnny.
I'd like to know is what does the S on Sam's cufflinks actually stand for? It's
Sam.
not for Superman, and it's not for Sam. What does it
Skeptical
stand
I know,
Sam.
but he knows something I don't.
for? No, I'm just hoping there's some really creative, dirty minds out there. Go for it, people.
Dirty.
Dirty.
Creative. I think you said creative, didn't it?
He's a great
Yeah.
man. Dirty.
Oh, Julian's put one. So myth. Oh, Leo as well. The one about maintenance
Oh.
being cheap with EVs because there
So-
are fewer moving parts. But Julian has mentioned one. I've got to pick this one out. Well, self-charging hybrids. They're great, aren't they? Because
it
they self-charge
fine?
themselves, don't they?
Is it Julian
I mean,
Hansa?
to be honest, you can just leave your car outside your house. It'll just self-charge
It'll
itself.
just do it.
We'll get to self-charging in just 1 second. Julian, how's Alice?
Yeah.
Whey!
If Alice is there, Sam's here.
We
Yeah.
love Alice.
Yeah.
We love Alice.
Yeah.
Right, Sam, hang on, we got to wind him up first.
Yeah.
So Toyota and many other brands have been putting around this kind of myth of this endless energy supply, this wonderful virtuous circle, the self-charging hybrid.
Self-charging electric hybrid.
Self-charging
I know.
electric
No
hybrid.
need to
I've
plug in.
said.
There's no need to plug in, Sam. What's not to love?
Just
Sam, on 3. 1, 2, ready to unleash the beast. 3, go!
Hi, Julian's mum, by the way.
He's gonna love that.
Self-charging hybrids. Yeah, there's no such thing as that. And
Oh, here we go.
That time.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Please all guests wear face covering at
All
all times
face
while
covering.
inside the centre and follow the one-way system marked on the floor. It is now normal to wear face covering inside the shopping centre. It should cover both your nose and your mouth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to reiterate though that we are in a closed shop and we have got permission from the centre to not wear these as long as we act accordingly.
meaning the actions we just did are entirely pointless.
Yes.
My actions are always entirely pointless.
Oh yes. Not going to argue with that, John.
Yeah, you didn't say that when I brought the donuts.
Self-charging hybrids, no such thing. So a vehicle requires an energy source, and by virtue of simple physics, a vehicle needs that energy source to power the wheels in some capacity. The way in which a self-charging vehicle works is that the petrol engine is creating the energy which then goes into the wheels. So it is. I think adverts have been banned in Europe that use the word self-charging because the implication is that you never have to plug it in, it just self-charges itself, it creates its own energy. But of course the energy source is petrol. It's petrol. It is a petrol car that makes energy. So it's self-charging is just a horrible, horrible phrase which misrepresents what is actually going on, in my humble opinion.
Or not so humble.
But I don't. I'm not alone. And if you bring up the topic with Rob Llewellyn from Fully Charged, he looks like a bulldog chewing a wasp. He gets very cross about it because it's misleading, and it's not. It's just not the truth. And we've got to get away from it.
But on the subject of misleading, we are calling another type of vehicle an electric vehicle, which is the range extended electric vehicle. Now, I do think they have a place.
But hang on.
Oh,
so range extended electric vehicle. Can you explain what that is?
Of course I can, yeah. So a range extended electric vehicle is a vehicle that is primarily electric. So I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
Primarily electric, but it has a petrol engine, generally quite a small one, sitting somewhere in the vehicle to, when you run out of charge or run very low on charge, it will start up and just create energy for the battery alone. It never drives the wheels, which I think is a positive thing.
Yes.
It charges the battery for a small period, giving you some energy to continue your journey, and then reverts to electric vehicle mode. And so whilst I absolutely wholeheartedly think that is a really good stepping stone to deal with some of the range anxiety, we still shouldn't call it an electric vehicle. It's a range extended electric vehicle because it does still have some emissions.
However, that said, and I don't disagree with you, I've always believed that every mile that is done on an electric power is a win. And so whilst I absolutely understand what you both have said, even if somebody only drives 10 miles on fully electric, and then the petrol engine kicks in, or it kicks in at various points in the journey, but when they get back into cities, goes to electric. Do you know what? I can kind of live with that because every electric mile's a good mile.
So my neighbour has a PHEV. So that is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle.
You get the hang of this
I'm
now.
getting
Yay!
a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and that plug-in hybrid electric vehicle has a 25 to 30 mile range.
Yep.
He carries out around 70% of his miles in entirely pure electric because he does short journeys to and from work. So he is absolutely using a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle in the way that it should be used, and then is doing his longer journeys with a mix of fuel and
Not just buying it for a tax advantage.
exactly, not just buying it, genuinely using it. And you know, it's a stepping stone. It's helping him understand you know, about plugging in, the benefits of electric, how nice it is to drive, all of those good things, whilst helping the environment, which is a really positive thing.
Yeah, all too often I hear that they were purchased because of tax advantage, and then they come to looking at the cable and it's still in a cellophane wrapper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just been a self-charging hybrid otherwise, you know. And like you say, average journey, 97% of us do 27 miles a day. The average journey is about 8 miles. So
Yeah.
if you're plugging them in,
I think the problem is the exploitation of that over the years with benefit and kind tax benefits
Yes,
of driving a plug-in hybrid and never plugging it in.
Yeah.
But that's changing, you know, or has changed. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, benefit and kind is now 0. It's only going to be 1% next year.
Yeah.
It's a
pure
huge,
electric.
for pure electric.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is a huge tax incentive now to switch to fully EV.
So huge, it's like getting a 10 grand pay rise for some of the bigger
Yeah.
vehicles.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's not to love,
just
you
switch
know?
to EV.
It's amazing how it works for everybody now, doesn't it?
I'm the same as your example, your neighbour's example. I'm doing short journeys most of the time and long ones. I'm doing it all on electric.
Yeah.
Electric.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's
that's-
definitely possible.
And frankly, sorry, John. And one last thing, you know, there's a ban. There's a ban on hybrids, petrol and diesel in 2035. And if the newspapers are to be believed last week, it's going to be brought forward to 2030. So we're potentially looking at less than 9 years before you can't even buy a hybrid vehicle anymore anyway.
Yeah.
Can we go to another myth?
Yes, please, before Sam gets hot under the collar.
Well, I think it builds. It does actually build.
I'm all right.
Because I've always thought that the electric vehicle community, those of us who do understand electric vehicles and use them, is a very supportive, caring place to be. That is my belief. However, there are some people in our brethren, sisterhood, call it what you will, that are a pain in the arse, that want to correct everybody, and they want to batter anybody who holds a different view. And they say that hydrogen is rubbish and will never work. They say that plug-in hybrids shouldn't be on the roads. And do you know what? We are ambassadors for change. We have an obligation, a moral obligation, to help people make the most efficient, cleanest journeys they can. And if that's by hydrogen, by compressed air, by salt water, I don't actually care.
No, me
What I
neither.
do care about is that people give it a go, that they are honest and open about it, that they try it. And I think the EV Centre here in Milton Keynes is a brilliant, brilliant place for you to come and try it at relatively low cost to see if it is for you. Electric vehicles aren't for everybody. But if they're for you, they'll change the way you behave. Give it a go. Give a hydrogen car a go. The Toyota Mirai is stunning. And if you get a chance, give it a go. Don't close your mind. I think we should be open. So the myth is that the EV community is all big, lovey, huggy, let's all hug a tree and drink, you know, soya latte. Actually, we're just ordinary people who've seen that there's a better way of doing
I've
stuff.
got no space on the board for that myth.
Right,
We
small.
need to put something smaller, like there's no future for EV, it's hydrogen, or hydrogen's the way. What's the myth?
Hydrogen's a way.
Hydrogen's the
Yeah.
way. DeLorean plans.
And all of those myths we mentioned about EVs aren't myths really for hydrogen because they are incredibly expensive to fuel.
Yep.
There are no network of refueling stations out there.
Well,
They are
let's
inefficient.
challenge that myth for a second. They're
Yep.
expensive to fuel. Actually, and I learned this from a professor of chemistry at St Andrews University, hydrogen is as simple as a cup of water, some electricity, 2 wires, creates hydrogen. If that energy is renewable, water,
Yep.
cup, vessel, hydrogen can be created. It is actually incredibly simple.
Yeah.
The electrolyzers that we need to create at commercial scale hydrogen are about £1 million each.
Yeah.
I suspect that GridServe have invested more than £1 million in some of your infrastructure. Just a guess. Let's say yes. So, hydrogen isn't necessarily that expensive to create in the scheme of things. What it does mean is that we have to invest in it. And the British government have almost no plan for hydrogen whatsoever. And as let me just go back just 1 second. And what I said earlier is that I have no axe to grind here about whether it's electric, hydrogen, seawater, compressed air, don't care. It has to be clean, it has to make business sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, but we have to make sure that whatever solution we choose works for us. But there are few right or wrong answers.
Yeah.
Now you bristled when I said the UK
Well,
government's got no...
Well, because they just invested 27 million in 4 projects around the country. I know it's not a big amount of money, John, but it is some money.
is some
and
money.
with key researchers such as Cranfield University, which is not too very far away from here, and they are looking into the different types of hydrogen, the green, blue, or brown. Hydrogen, obviously green we know is the desired goal, but there are other types, and that is, it's important to recognize that hydrogen isn't a silver bullet, but it is a part of the infrastructure going forward.
There is no single silver bullet.
No.
My frustration, Paul, and I don't disagree with you, 26 million is welcome. When the British government say there is £2.6 billion being made available for active travel to promote walking and cycling, and there is 26 million for hydrogen, which you and I both know will bring some benefit to some heavy haulers in terms of reducing their emissions. There is a mismatch there which is unbelievable. And during COVID, we all depended on heavy goods vehicles tanking up and down motorways to bring us our simple things like toilet roll, bread, and vans, exactly the same. We depend on these vehicles far more than we ever stop to think about. And it is vital that we do invest in the right infrastructure, because there is no single silver bullet. This will be a mix of vehicles that
Are you saying that the infrastructure should be, hydrogen should be made on site?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because that's part of the distribution of hydrogen, is part of the lack of
Distribution is a complete nonsense.
Yeah, because
as
of
you
the
start
great,
to distribute, you create massive networks which are flawed.
Yeah.
What we need to do is create locally, store locally, use locally.
I think it has a place, but passenger cars and stuff,
No,
we're
it's not
talking,
the place.
it's just not.
That's not the place.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, John, that whether you're spending a fiver now or the government's spending 10 million tomorrow, you've got to justify whatever it is you're spending. And I think that the 26 million is not a lot of money, but if it creates a catalyst and it says, well, actually in the commercial environment, hydrogen can work, then that hopefully is a catalyst for then further investment. I think to throw billions at it now would be a pretty risky choice to make for a government. So we've got to get it stage by
To
stage.
give you just a little bit of background, I know we're off on Tangent Boulevard. The Scottish government invested £10 million a year in walking and cycling. When they started, cycling was at 1.4% of all journeys. When they finished a 5-year programme, cycling was at 1.4% of journeys. 10 million
Oh, wow.
no more journeys.
That is not what I wanted you to say.
And I think that's what the EV Cafe does. We talk about facts.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't perpetuate myths.
So here's a fact, or this is an anecdotal fact. The government cannot spend the money that it's so 2.6 million on cycling and walking. 2.6 billion on cycling and walking. How do I benefit from that? How do I get that money? And the more important point is, there's a scrappage scheme in London. There are government grants against all these different vehicles and other scrappage schemes. How is that money getting into the hands of people that are actually wanting to make those transitions? Because I don't see it being really simple. There's this whole green thing going on at the moment around our housing. I know I could go online and really do a lot of detail and research how to get that money, but we need to make it simple, and there needs to be real communication and education to enable the money that has been set aside for transition to get into the right places.
Love it. Saz,
Love it, but move along.
No, because I'm going to pick up on that because I think it's worth exploring.
Good.
Yes.
Education.
Education.
There is education. I think the myth is that having an electric vehicle is easy.
Well, I think like all good things, people who drive electric vehicles in the early days were the early adopters, the tech fans, the people who really wanted to try and make a difference. But I'm seeing more and more people wanting it to be a normal thing. Behaviour change goes in one direction, and that is to normalise. That's not going to happen until everybody gives it a go. Like you were saying earlier, go to your local experience centre, find your local OLEV scheme which will enable you to try a vehicle. In fact, just go to the dealership. They fall over themselves trying to show you the electric car, and take your doubting Thomas with you, because they will be. Oh, hang on, we've changed it. It's a skeptical Sam now.
Pessimistic.
I was
Silly
silly
Sam.
Silly Sam.
Oh, am I skeptical, Sarah? Oh, brilliant. There you go. But I just want people to just share. Education is as much as communication. So just talk about all the good things as much as you can, but be honest and real about the bad too.
Sorry, Don.
Go,
Just
go, go.
on that, just want to say we are at the Electric Vehicle Experience Centre. They are going to give a special offer to EV Cafe members of 30% off loan. I'll get one of the guys from the EV Cafe to come on and say hello. They are a great bunch of guys, gurus. They live, breathe, drive EVs day in, day out, and they're honest, and they're not selling anything here. So they are just giving you advice and lending you a car. There's no pressure environment. So I really highly recommend Milton Keynes Experience Centre. And I'll grab one of the guys if I can find them, just come on for 2 minutes. Tom.
It's worth saying actually that all dealerships were not created equal, and if you're going to go and see somebody about an electric vehicle, do your homework. Go and find people who are real experts, and they exist. And in most dealerships, you might have one person who actually understands what they're talking about.
It's true.
If it sounds like a lie, if the guy's having to think about it, they don't know what they're talking about, go somewhere else. Electric vehicle centre like this here, the Experience Centre, they don't sell stuff, they let you try it because they recognise that the current dealer network that we have isn't good at selling EVs. They're not good because one, they are a little bit more complicated, and two, it takes about 45 minutes to sell an electric vehicle, it takes 15 to sell an internal combustion engine one, and you get the same commission either way. So why would you sell an EV, even if they're better for the customer, when you don't
Well,
get any more
John,
money?
it's really interesting. I was looking through the chat earlier. Thank you, Gary Richardson, who said, are OEMs holding back supply of EV to recover from their investment in ICE? What's your opinion on that?
I think
Does that correlate with what you were just talking
no.
about?
I just don't think there is the supply. I think there's
Full
been
stop. Oh, meh. That was one of them.
Sorry, can I just interrupt just for one moment? As I said, I just want to bring someone, one of the gurus from the Electric Vehicle Experience Centre here in the Milton Keynes, just to quickly say hello, tell us what they're all about, and also just a little bit about the offer that they can give to our EV Cafe members on LinkedIn.
Microphone's here.
I'll tell you what, take a seat, Ben. So just a little
The
bit
mic's
about,
there.
gurus and everything else. Oh yeah, I'm Ben, I'm from the EV Experience Centre.
The camera's over there.
Oh,
That's-
yeah.
that's-
I'm looking at the microphone.
That's the mic,
yeah.
that's the camera.
I'm a singer by trade, so yeah.
Sing us a song.
Yeah, no, not right now. So I'm an EV guru here at the Milton Keynes EV Experience Centre. We are not for profit. We're all about getting people into electric cars. Normally we do free 15-minute test drives. We're not allowed to do them at the moment, but we are offering our longer loan scheme. It's a flexible scheme from 2 to 8 days where you can borrow an EV for £15 a day. You get 50 miles included with that. We have Renault, Mini, Volkswagen and BMW on our fleet, so you can try electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles from those groups. Right now we're going to do an offer for EV Cafe viewers. If you sort of message us, phone or email us or inquire on our website, just put saw you on EV Cafe or just put EV Cafe or something like that, we're going to give you 30% off a loan. So what that kind of looks like is, can't do maths, what's 30% off 120?
30% of 120
That's 90,
is
isn't
£36, is £84.
£84.
So
if
for
you want-
120.
Yeah, that's for 8 days, 7 nights in an EV. That sounds like a bargain. We have
That's really good.
this. Oh yeah, look, we've got the list of vehicles here. There we go.
Oh,
Whoa,
well
you
done.
are a superhero.
I'll tell
That
you
was
what,
lightning.
55 left-handed, that's pretty
That's it. Hold it.
There you
This
go.
way
You hold
go.
it on there.
Fantastic. Shove it
So
over
a
there.
little bit over
To
this
the
way,
right,
John.
yeah.
That's
That's
it.
it, Scott.
Perfect.
Perfect. So these are all the vehicles that we have on our fleet: the i3, the Mini Countryman plug-in hybrid, the ZE40, ZE50, Zoe, and the e-Golf and the e-Up. We are here to give advice. We cannot sell you a car. We're not here to make any money. We want people to drive electric, and
Also, if it's not something we tell people that much, but it's something that we do. If you borrow a car from us, you can try all of these vehicles at least once. You can use that offer code. If you end up buying a plug-in vehicle after borrowing a car with us, we will refund one of those loans as well. So I had a lovely email this morning. A lady just bought a ZE50 Zoe after trying 3 of our cars.
Yay!
So we'll be giving her £75 of her money back for doing it, which is good. So once we've got the V5, but yeah, it's a really great place to come and talk about electric cars and to see a few models. Unfortunately, I can't take you out in them, but you can book one. So
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
And-
Ben.
Well done, Ben.
Just saying that on Twitter at EVEC_MK. That's at EVEC_MK. Twitter your lives out.
So, guys, you can join the EV Cafe group on LinkedIn. So, if you click on that and join that group, then I'm sure that will be evidence enough for Ben to give you the 30% off deal, which is fantastic. We really appreciate that, and that's the power of the EV Cafe bringing electric vehicles to life for you.
Okay, and then let's bring it back to a no myth.
Bring it back.
Bring it back.
What are we going to do then? There's no EVs to buy.
There's no EVs to buy, and I think also lead times might be one as
Oh,
well.
Sam's gone. Sam, of course.
Sam's
Gone.
I'm all right. I'm back in the room.
Thinking, oh God, why am I
He's thinking
here?
I miss Moloko. I think, can I have that please?
So yeah, there's no electric vehicles to buy. That is partially true and partially utter codswallop. Okay, so fair to say that there are suppliers who have had some issues, usually with batteries, getting hold of the raw materials to make the batteries, to supply them and get them into the supply chain. However, those issues are largely being overcome now post-COVID. Supplies are now coming through. You should not have the 6 to 8 months wait that you had previously, I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
But that just looks at part of the market. There's also a massive used market. And somebody said to me the other day, why on earth would you lease a brand new electric vehicle at, let's say for the sake of argument, £300 and odd a month, costing you something in the region of £9,500 over 3 years, when you could go on Auto Trader and find 347 different electric vehicles at under £9,500. And at the end of the 3 years, you own it. And that was a really interesting question. So the used market, there's plenty out there. And the new market, there's plenty out there. It is jobless.
So, of course, being in leasing, I might disagree a little bit. But so electric vehicles, what we know about electric vehicles in the used market is they're actually holding their value really quite a lot. So what you're going to do is pay quite a lot more for a used electric vehicle than you might do for a used diesel or petrol vehicle, and rightly so, because it's a better vehicle and is giving better value.
We had a screaming child in the background that was caused about it.
Okay.
Being taken away to the dungeon.
But also, vehicle leasing is actually really quite competitive. And so what we're seeing is, take the Zoe, for instance, rates of nearer £200 a month for that vehicle. Also, the Leaf is coming out at around that sort of number. And we're seeing also very competitive rates on the medium vehicles and even the Teslas of this world. So leasing actually gives you the opportunity to benefit from the highest level of battery state, you know, the longest ranges, and also give you that security of knowing that you're in a new vehicle, and then you can change it after 3 or 4 years. Although you can run electric vehicles for longer, because it is thought that electric vehicles will survive longer than their ICE, internal combustion engine, counterparts.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate Paul's point about, you know, lead times. So 2 years ago, Renault invested €1 billion into having no supply constraints on our EVs.
Wow.
And even though we took the largest fleet EV order only a few months ago, we still have the same lead time of 8 weeks.
Tell us
and
about
we
that
have
large order,
resources.
Johnny. Tell us about that large order.
Ooh, so our friends at Onto, car subscription company, all inclusive. They're called Onto.
Onto,
Formerly- yeah, previously known,
O-N-T-O.
yeah, and previously known as EVZ.
Yep.
Said that right, didn't I, Sam?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
They're an all-inclusive car subscription company. Sorry, there's a, if you can hear the screaming child in the background, and it's very flexible. You can have it for 1 month.
The screaming
or you can have
child?
it
Or
for a year.
the,
Yes, yes.
Move on quickly. I can feel a lawsuit coming on.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, that for us is not the case. We have plenty of Zoes in resource,
So
and we have a
Onto,
good,
Onto. Tell me, how many vehicles did they take?
1,100.
1,100
Amazing.
Zoe.
Yes.
Well done, Onto.
Well,
Well
have
done,
they
Onto,
got
yeah,
them yet?
well done, Onto. They're taking delivery as we
Yeah,
speak. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So they are available immediately, and they're great. So if you do want them a little bit longer, or you want to really put one through its paces, then Onto is a good first. Well, I believe. Yeah.
Can I throw in though that electric vans are slightly more tricky. It seems that a lot of the bigger companies are buying up the majority of the vans. So, you know, the new Vivaro just coming out,
Yeah.
they're getting sold into some of the bigger companies. And so, therefore, they're not generally as easily available. But, you know, Renault do have some stock
Yeah.
availability of
Yeah.
Kangoo, a little bit of Master, the Zoe we know. And there is also really good availability of things like the Kona and the Nero, which are really quite popular. The Tesla is not on the long lead times that it used to be, the Model 3, but vans is still a bit of an issue. Although ENV 200 we can get reasonably quickly, so you can get those kinds of vehicles. So, I mean, if you want to know about availability of vehicles, of course I'm going to say, give me a shout. I can kind of point you in the right direction.
Colin Easters just made a comment saying that he's delivering 117 to one user next month as part of a 140 unit Zoe order. I'd like to know a bit more about that, actually.
Johnny missed out on one.
Is it going to count to Johnny's numbers? That's the question. Will it count to his next month's bonus?
Oh, dear.
And again, on the van side, we have had Kangoo for a little while. We're on our second generation of Kangoo. And we don't have any lead times on that. In fact, actually, we have a better supply on our EV product than our mask announcement.
He's just said, by the way, leave my punters alone.
Okay. So we've talked about the vehicles being available, but what about the price?
Ooh, nice. Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice segue there, I think, guys. You did a
Okay,
good job.
price.
I think what you just said, Paul, about Zoe being £200
Yeah.
a month, that's clear parity to those leasing of maybe a nice.
Well, so
equivalent
here's the thing:
in the
it's
spec and
not
stuff.
quite parity. No, it isn't. So if we go on a direct comparison of a Zoe car to a similar sized, similar spec'd ICE or petrol or diesel car, then it is around 40, maybe £50 a month less. But as Sam was saying earlier before we came on, it's not the price of the vehicle that matters.
No.
And this is where because we get on to commercial vehicles, because commercial vehicles, there isn't quite price parity. And we need to talk about a bigger thing there. But certainly when you factor in the benefits of running an electric vehicle, i.e. you're not paying, five or so pounds at the moment at the pump, you're paying 14p a kilowatt. Now that kilowatt gets you around, we heard from Johnny earlier, about 4 miles.
Kilowatt hour.
Yeah, kilowatt hour. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Every kilowatt hour that the battery generates, it gets you about 4 miles. And that's 14p, and you pay £5 for about 30, 40 miles for that gallon of fuel. So the cost is around 30%, isn't it, for your fuel? So if you're paying £100 a month on fuel today in your ICE, your diesel, your petrol, then you're only going to be paying around £30 a month, assuming you can charge at home, of course.
Yeah, I think fuel alone, another screaming child walking by.
Is it the same one? Just back.
Yeah, they're just
yeah.
walking them up and down.
Just fuel alone.
I will get
Please, at all times whilst inside the centre and follow the one-way system clearly marked on the floor. It is now law to wear a face cover inside the shopping centre. This should cover both your nose and mouth. Thank you.
such a nag.
Come on, Johnny, go for it.
Right, go
I
for it,
was
Johnny.
just going to say, yeah, as you said, already, the fuel aspect of it more than outweighs the difference in purchase price,
Yes.
I think, and lease costs, if not parity.
But
There's other things like ULEZ and everything else that all adds up.
Maintenance.
It's very competitive, yeah.
Yeah.
But why don't manufacturers, when the Outlander came out, Outlander?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
The PHEV came out from Mitsubishi. They had parity of price. So it didn't matter whether you had a diesel or an electric, same price. And it was genius. And the things just were flying off the shelves. And they got very, with all due respect, complacent.
Yeah.
That, oh yeah, these things will just sell themselves. And they did.
Yeah. They were parity because they got the £5,000 as well from the government, didn't they?
Yeah.
Why is it that other manufacturers have not jumped on that same bandwagon, do you think, and said, let's just make things really simple for the customer. Actually, we don't care what your drivetrain is. We'd like you to take an electric because it's cleaner. If you still want to take a diesel, you crack on.
Yeah.
It's quite clever.
So, I mean, so Russell Bolton's just come on with regard to commercial vehicles. And he correctly mentions that you can actually...
We have every screaming child in
That's a new
Milton
one,
Keynes.
that's cool.
I know.
that was
When are they going
different.
back to kids?
It's like a
Going back to
nursery
school,
just
sorry.
open around the corner.
Sarah, can we keep a 5-bar gate of all the screaming children that go by?
That's literally at least 5 years.
When are they back to school, kids?
Not soon enough.
Soon enough, yeah. So coming back to the commercial vehicle,
He's a one-trick pony. This
and
boy.
I know nothing else. Just give me vans. But Russell is also a fellow van man,
Fair
so
enough.
good on you, Russell.
Well done, mate.
He's right to say that you can get some price parity
Yes,
on
you can.
vans at
Yes,
the moment.
yes.
And the other bit, and this is really important to consider, when we think about maintenance, one of the most expensive things for any commercial vehicle user is the downtime,
Yeah.
that time when the vehicle is not operating due to maintenance, routine, maintenance, unforeseen, or anything else. Accident is often something. Now, we believe that from statistics, anecdotally, that electric vehicles are safer. They're in less accidents because they're easier to drive. Point and shoot, very simple. They are maintained less, and we've heard that some ENV 200s have gone over 90,000 miles without even changing the brakes because they haven't needed it for lots of reasons, which we can come on to. And also, they are less likely to break down because there are a lot less moving parts. So people are saying often 27 moving parts on an electric vehicle, and compared with maybe over 1,000 on a over 1,000 on an ICE. So therefore, the value of downtime being on average £700 a day for a commercial vehicle needs to be factored in when you're thinking about the definitely higher cost of an electric van, particularly the heavy vans, which are often over £60,000. It does prove a bit of a barrier. But
Well, look at this. Peter has just written, correct, Paul. I've just been speaking to a client who operates removal vans in London. It would save him £250 per week per van on fuel costs alone. And then, as you're pointing out, he will save on overall maintenance as well. So is it just the ticket price that's putting people off? What about total cost of ownership? Are we scaring people with the price we pay? Perhaps we need to change our language to say, my MG ZSEV costs me £400 a month. Oh, and guess what? So did my diesel that I had before.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how we word it, as a total cost of ownership rather than the ticket price.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's new parlance for people.
Yeah.
When you come into the EV space, I'd never heard of TCO, total cost
Yeah.
of ownership, until I came into this space, and suddenly it was like, right, so you have to look at fuel costs, capital cost of the vehicle, maintenance, downtime, all of those things. The calculation is not as simple as what's the ticket price on the front of the vehicle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Much more complicated.
I think we just, again, it's all about reminding ourselves that people are new to this and just reminding them that still is. I've been doing it for day one, and I unfortunately had to fill up a few vehicles in the past couple of months, and I quite frankly forgot just how bloody expensive it is.
Yeah.
Even when it's dropped.
There's been a few comments on this thread as well, which is quite interesting. I think Leo said there's, I think he said £500 for a door handle on a Tesla, or £2,500 for the screen. Well, true as that may be, I'm pretty sure your German counterpart, when you go down to the component level, is probably quite expensive as well. So, so I'm not really sure I buy that argument. But there are a couple of people in there as well. I saw a Porsche, a guy who was used to have this is more Zoe stuff really. There was a couple of examples of someone that's taken their got rid of their Porsche and changed to a Zoe,
Yeah.
and the cost of the Zoe is less than the fuel that he was putting in his Porsche.
Exactly.
Uh,
I bet
and-
they don't miss it.
And there was a Q7 as well, which is gone for a Zoe instead. So
The fuel he would have spent paid for that Zoe.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fuel alone paid for the car. Yeah.
And what we found, we have a real friend of the EV Cafe in Dean Hedger from the AA, business development manager, and Dean was telling me the other day that the vast majority of any issues with an electric vehicle is not them running out of juice, it's the 12-volt battery that dies. So that there are a whole host of batteries in an electric vehicle to power the thing. The 12-volt battery is the one that does your internal entertainment system, your windscreen wipers, those ancillary bits. And it's that one that causes the problem, not the major drivetrain one. So the AA are saying electric vehicles, fantastic, they just don't break down.
And it's interesting. There's a few more threads, a few more comments in the thread around the cost of tyres and cost of parts. Well, so all vehicles are moving down what they call ADAS. I don't know what ADAS stands for. A driver assistance systems, advanced driver assistance systems. I think it is. Yeah, or safety. And basically that means in the windscreen there is a lot of technology, and so regardless of whether it's petrol, diesel, or electric, and the thing is, all electric are at the height of technology. They're all going down this route, and it will advanced driver assistance systems. Thank you, John. I would give you a gentle
The safety
pat,
wasn't on
but
there.
I'm not
Glamorous
allowed.
assistant.
Yes. So basically, the reality is that you will pay more for these vehicles, and tyres. £400 a corner, I would guess that they have maybe an S, maybe with the 20-inch wheels, and similarly, you would do that on an M3 or the tyre costs are very high, and that's just the reality. But if you get a different wheel, 18-inch, more common, then you're going to pay a lesser cost for the tyres. So that's just market economics, I believe.
Yeah.
But to be honest, don't get the 18-inch wheels on a Tesla.
Speaking of 18-inch, could you show us your massive clock?
Oh, love of your work. Get the big clock out.
It's time for Q&A.
Q&A.
All right then, team. I've been reading through the Q&A and we've got some good ones here. Graham Cooper, who we are sadly
Oh, Graham.
Great
as
bags.
well as Ed Sargent from Pivot Power, but don't worry, they'll be popping up in future episodes. This one
Sergeant
says, John, red waistcoat, 90s boy band throwback, discuss.
Okay. Right, I'm about to discuss this with you. Bite me.
Okay,
Boy band.
moving on, be nice to our friends.
Don't even go there.
Next one is from Paul.
What was it?
What do you want to say?
No, I'm just.
He
There was
doesn't
some
want to
slag
say.
off that I didn't quite get.
What do teachers say
But-
if you don't want to share it with the class? Don't
Okay,
share it with anyone else?
I'll share something. And RAV4 has bitten the dust as well for a Zoe. So we've got a RAV4, a Porsche, and a Q7 on the thread. Has already bitten the dust for 3 Zoes so far.
Okay, next one. Paul Barnfather says, here's a myth for you. A modern diesel is just as clean as an EV.
Where's Ewan McTurk?
Ewan McTurk.
Come on, you. Hashtag plug live.
Yeah.
It is,
Hashtag
well,
plug life.
it is until it goes on the road.
Oh,
So
good,
to the
good.
point in the creation of it, sadly, it's
Yeah.
true
Yeah.
because they are both around 10 tons of
But
carbon.
it just seems that nobody measures the amount, like you have to get oil, you have to ship that oil. 30% of shipping is shipping oil.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
mental.
Yeah.
And then obviously it gets refined, and there's some refineries in the UK that are happily, well, they did from 2004, they went on TV to say, oh, we're really proud to say that we use up 2 cities worth of electricity refining this oil.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
we don't include all of this in there. It's obviously stop saying that now. That's 2004.
Yeah.
And then it just gets burned,
Yeah.
and it does it all over again and again. It's just
So
never ending.
what we're incredibly proud of is that that's well to wheel, and we're doing sun to wheel.
Yeah.
So taking it out of the sky rather than out of the ground.
Sam, we did establish earlier that the S on Superman is in fact hope, and he also recharges by the sun, so that does make you
Suntan.
Sun Superman. Sun Superman.
Sun, San, Superman.
That's it. That could be the
Ultimate
Sun,
Volt
Sun,
Face.
Yeah.
Superman.
Suntan Superman.
Not sure I love it, but it's not, at least it's not Ultimate Volt Face.
Actually, Sam, I have another one for you from Charles Key, specifically to Sam, Clark, and panelists. Good piece on LinkedIn today from Roger Atkins and Toddington Harper
Ah, yes.
on GridServe's first UK electric forecourt. what's next and where.
What's next?
Please say the Southwest. We're dying.
Yeah, I haven't seen that post. I haven't seen that post yet because I've been here all morning. But I look forward to seeing it. But yeah, it was great to have Roger on site a few weeks ago to look at our first forecourt, which is coming along quite nicely. Or both actually.
Oh.
We had Roger and Robert both same day. So yeah, it's coming along nicely. Thank you for the comment about it. And the intention very much is to build well over 100 of these around the country. So there will be one in your vicinity over the next few years, of all different shapes and sizes. Some of them will have solar farms connected to them. Some of them will have solar farms that we sleeve the energy to. But yeah, we're gonna be busy, very busy, building renewable energy and charging infrastructure for the masses over the next few years.
I have an even more important question for you, Sam.
Okay.
When we'll be able to do a live stream from GridServe, the EV Cafe?
When live stream. Well, the beauty of the electric forecourt, amongst other attributes that it has, which I've already pointed out several times, is that upstairs on a 2-story building we have an education centre, which will be like this, and the ability for people to not just understand more about EVs, but also to lease them too, including the energy. And then downstairs we will have cafe and retail facilities. So I see no reason why and a gym upstairs. Yep. So I see no reason why we shouldn't be doing something a bit like this in a place like that at some point in the future.
So that was very diplomatically answered, wasn't it? As I'm not telling you.
I'm learning. I'm getting better at this.
What do you reckon? Should we let John?
Yeah, go on, John.
Please,
John,
Liz,
go on,
please. We've got 20 minutes left.
We've got a lot of Q&A as well.
That was exactly where I was going. We need to hear from people.
Oh,
Well, that's what we're doing. That's what this whole section is.
No,
Is
no,
there
no,
any
no,
You
questions?
can't turn them on. You can't turn them on.
no. We need questions from them. Come on.
Well, that's what we're doing, reading that.
If you hadn't put your
so
hand up,
moving
that's
on.
what Sarah was doing.
That is, yeah. Oh,
I'm old.
wow. You can't get the star. It stays. Okay, moving on. Tony
Put your clock
Shorthouse
back in there and
says,
sit down.
everyone loving the roadshow, what can be done to help those in wheelchairs use the charge points where the displays and card readers are halfway up, i.e. out of reach? Can lighting and location of the public charge points be improved? Charging at night for lone drivers can be intimidating,
Absolutely.
as highlighted by Maddie recently.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maddie is Maddie Moat, by the way. Follow her on Twitter.
Yeah.
Maddie,
And
Maddie's
there's
amazing.
a massive thread from Maddie on Twitter, which goes into some great detail. I know personally I'm using that as kind of some feedback on what people need to do with their charging networks. Sam, I guess you're making provision for disabled drivers?
Yeah, the whole building is lit up like a Christmas tree, so it'll be very, very well lit, and the building itself is fully disabled access as well. So hopefully that will solve that problem. But I think if I take my GridServe hat off just for a split second, I think it's a really, really good point that a lot of the charge points available at the moment, there is a definitive curb there, which makes it hard to get in and out of. And the displays aren't necessarily in the right places, and some of them are front facing to the vehicle and some of them are on the side. So yeah, it's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about before, but we definitely need to make more effort to make sure we don't discriminate.
That said, I suspect that disabled drivers have a similar challenge with petrol pumps. I don't know, unfortunately, and I've not
Well, I think the question came about the display itself and the fact that it's hard to
the
reach.
manufacturer of the thing.
But again, if you pay at a pump, you still can't see the screen.
Yeah.
I'll tell
You
you
might
what,
pay at the kiosk inside though.
what we should do is we should actually go out at some point in a wheelchair and try and use some of the chargers.
Well, I got a great shout out. Shout out to Carl Nicholson, fleet manager in North Somerset Council, who was able to boast the first, installed by Elmtronics, brilliant company, the first disabled accessible charge point, including space for the doors, team.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
never give you enough space to get out the
Yeah.
flipping car, even with baggage and kids, let alone
Yeah.
trying to maneuver yourself with a wheelchair. So that bay was dedicated purely for people with accessibility issues, and I think that's an excellent way
Yeah.
to approach the problem. But this comes down to procurement. So those who are designing and manufacturing the charge points, why not just make them all a bit lower? Why not?
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, no, we need to change the way we think.
love it.
Like
Change
that
the
a
way
lot.
we think. Okay,
Brilliant.
thank you so much for raising that, Tony. There's another one here that I quite like from Mark Matthews, who says, do you think there needs to be a change to financial support for EV ownership? If you're buying an ICE, it's easier to get the vehicle finance sorted as they don't take the whole life cost into account, whereas buying an EV is included in the screen price. It's a really valid point. It comes back to what I was saying earlier. That ticket price is scary. Every time I say this to my friends, they're like, oh, you're earning a lot. And I'm like,
Yeah.
But my point is it's the same cost each month, and I don't own it. I borrowed the money off my back. So I'm just paying them out every single month, and the electricity is so cheap. So it's about not being shy of that price and just seeing how it works for you and your finances. But Tony does add, who buys EVs and who leases these days? Lease is still better than ICE.
Yep.
Because you don't have the upfront cost.
Absolutely, and you know, I'm a leasing advocate, of course, but more importantly than that, it's about kind of what is the best tool to enable people to get into vehicles, and certainly one of the things that is under consideration by many people is to really get to the nuts and bolts of what it actually costs you to run your vehicle.
Yes.
Is it, you know, you've got the vehicle, you've got the maintenance, you've got the insurance, you've got the downtime, the recovery, the protection, everything involved in running a vehicle needs to be considered when you make that final choice. The lease cost is part of it, but it does make it easier to calculate. But there will come along, like the subscription models, the easy way of knowing exactly what you're going to spend on everything, including your energy, every month.
I've got two really fun ones on the Q&A as well. Okay, so apparently Kevin Booker is saying that he still has to bust this myth, which is that you can't take a car in a car wash if it's an electric car, or that you can't charge it in the rain, which I know Dean Hedger did a comedy one about. Yeah, that is how I got this hair, by the way. So I tried these things. What an idiot. I got electrocuted. So unfortunately, that is still alive and well as a ridiculous myth. I think it's my favourite, to be honest. It's my favourite of all time.
I think we'd all be dead if that was true, because it's been raining for the last, you know, week and a half. You know, we've still managed to charge our vehicles.
You know what you were saying, Sam, about GridServe, thinking about this and putting lighting and covering. I just wish every single charge point had some kind of canopy. Even the most rubbish remote bus stop still has some kind of canopy.
Yeah.
And so you can't just stand there. My car doesn't charge unless it's locked, so you've got to be out of the car or
really?
sit inside
Wow.
it really still.
Yeah.
So,
That comes back to quality, not quantity. We don't need tens of thousands of locations where you're going to get drowning wet and you can't have access. It needs to be better quality of charging locations.
Yeah.
And the charging in the rain or in the car wash thing, you know, like I said earlier, 99% of people don't drive EVs, so you don't know what you don't know, and it seems like a stupid
that
question,
is logic, though, isn't it?
but you know, we still got to educate people to that level of simplicity, because you know,
I
that's
can
where it
feel a
starts.
film coming on. I can feel a video coming on.
I did one of me and my daughter in the car wash, and she's just like that.
We could do charging in the rain.
Judge, how's that? Do.
No, come on.
Go on. Charging in the rain. Just charging in the rain.
I can't do it.
I'm charging
again.
I'm scraping the barrel for you guys. Too much.
I just want to reiterate, this is recorded.
Number one by Christmas. Come on.
I think our attendee count just dropped by 200.
We can never unsee that.
That's going in the highlights video, whatever happens.
Oh, I've got an idea. Could everyone consider what Johnny needs to do for his next video to introduce the next EV cafe? So he's wandered through the sunflower fields.
Is it a lavender field?
I wonder what's next, guys. What should we get him to do next? Oh, sorry, I should have said Voltface rather than Johnny Berry.
How about walk through a sewage pond?
Cheers, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
What about lick a battery? A big one.
I think now we've got about 10 minutes left. I just think it's worth just mentioning a few things. So, as I say, EVEC, the Electric Vehicle Experience Centre, will give you 30% off. You do need to call in before the end of next week. So what is that date? Is that like the 4th or something?
Yeah, Friday the 4th.
Yeah,
Friday the 4th. So you need to call in before Friday the 4th, and you can book for whenever you want, but you will get 30% off their rates. And as I say, they've got VW e-Golf, ER, Renault Zoe, of course, Mini Countryman plug-in hybrid, and BMW i3. So do give them a call if you want to give them a trial. And then some other few things just worth mentioning. If you haven't already, be great to see you on the EV Cafe members group page on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
We'd love to hear from you, and we can keep those myths going, and we can keep the conversations going on there. We aren't sure on what the location, or not necessarily the agenda just yet on the next EV Cafe, but it does fall on World EV Day, which is the 9th of September. So yeah, we will be planning something to go alongside that day. And
Suggest away, people.
Yeah, go for it.
There's
Go
a
for it.
suggestion here for you. You need to be running through a museum filled with big clocks.
Ooh.
That could be the next bit. Maybe you pass the baton ultimate bolt thing.
Yeah, we could do one each.
Apparently, I could go to Amsterdam. There are huge clocks there.
How
You
will
can
you
pay
get
for me,
there?
I'll go.
Now, people have been commenting about my waistcoat
Yeah.
Yes.
and wondering why. It's because the EV Cafe is magic, and I'm about to do a magic trick.
Oh,
Recycling before your very eyes. Okay?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Happy?
worried. I'm
I'm
worried.
a little worried too.
He's taking his clothes off.
Right, okay, so here we are. It's off. All right, now, here we have, in true Tommy Cooper style, bottle, this bottle,
Oh, I know what he's going to do.
bottle, this bottle. Thank you very much. Right, okay, bottle, this bottle, this waistcoat. Waistcoat, bottle, this, bottle gone. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Nearly done.
Oh dear.
Oh, dear.
So we answered all the questions
No,
from the
we've
audience.
answered all the questions, I
We've got
think.
time. Oh, we have answered
I
all
think
of
we
them.
have answered the questions from the audience, but we do still have another myth, 2 myths that we haven't addressed yet. One was about the brakes and the air quality implications,
Yep.
and how actually they're worse than standardised cars in cities. So who's going to tackle that beast?
I can't see how brakes are worse than an ice vehicle, because
No, they're
you're
definitely
not
They're
using
definitely
the
not.
brakes, are you? Yeah, you're using less.
So they are
The
definitely.
regenerative
yeah.
braking is going to be a lot
It's a
less
motor, there's
impactful
nothing
than
wrong with it.
Even
Yeah.
if the compounds are the same for the brake pads, there is absolutely no way that you use the brakes. I think that the research is certainly 50 to 60%. You use the brakes less than you would in an internal combustion engine vehicle. It's just not true.
Yeah, unless of course you're in a real high performance, expensive electric vehicle and you're doing a lot of stop and starts of just 3 seconds to 60, and you're doing a lot of tyre scrubbing, burning those tyres. That's the only way you're going
In
to be
normal
more, aren't you?
use.
Yeah.
Actually, tyres is a good point, because I know G from Enso Tyres is in the audience as well. The tyre particulates and the emissions that creates is something
Yeah.
we've got
Yeah.
to massively consider as well. And he's doing amazing work trying to develop tyres which are just better for the environment than the ones we have today. So,
Excellent.
good for him.
Well done, G.
Well done, G.
Okay, so on that basis, I think we've pretty much covered all the myths. Do you want to show up the camera? All the
Yeah,
ones
I
that
mean-
we've done.
I kind of ran out of space because my writing's scruffy, but it.
Got it.
Got
Got
it.
it.
Yeah.
Beauty. Lovely. Yeah.
Busted.
I feel like the one we spent a lot of time on was total cost of ownership and price, so that's why I put a ring around that. But generally, I feel like the no charges anywhere is going to be the one to really address with the audience, because that's the one they care about. Those are the horror stories that people hear. So I think. Oh, look, here he's done.
So any last words from any of you lovely lot?
I want to know what people think. Could you just quickly, Q&A, has today worked for you? It's been a nightmare for Johnny and Paul yesterday trying to technically sort this out. Sarah did nothing. Sam just turned up and looked gorgeous, and I didn't even turn up and look gorgeous. But what do you think? Tell us. Put it in the comments now in the question and answer. Send it to us on LinkedIn so that we can see it. This is only going to get as good as you make us get it.
Absolutely.
So please help us.
Yeah.
All ideas welcome.
Yeah, Lester's already made a comment saying, yeah, lovely stuff, guys. Great energy, keep it up. Peter Bracken, love the show today. Paul Barnfather, yes, totally. So some positive responses. So
Thanks,
only
guys.
gives us the validation to do something else.
But it's, do you know what? So we've spent a lot of our time leaning forward into this chat box because these guys have really been
Thank
yeah.
you.
sharing
Brilliant.
back to us. And you know what? Without that energy, we'd just be 5 people kind of chewing
Yeah,
the cud.
yeah.
And yeah, we'd have fun because we like some, no.
I used to like you until you
We
nominated
like
me to go
each
to
other.
Sewerfield.
That's all good. And the privilege of being able to get together, we know that that's not all possible for many people. So we really value that. And we value today. It's been, you know, I've learned stuff as we've talked, and I'm sure hopefully you've learned something as well. But we've learned stuff from you. It's a mutual circle of education. And that's the one thought I want to leave us with is, let's educate to help people make good decisions about their vehicle use, be they car or van.
Pretty good. What am I going to say? Just thank you, everybody who's listening. Thank you, everyone who's enjoyed our ridiculous activities. Hopefully, there's some degree of education and learning in there at some level. And thank you to Johnny, as always, for organising this. And it's a privilege to be an Evenger. I love it.
Yes.
Long may it continue, and long may you keep listening. So thank you very much.